Was I scared? A little bit. Nothing would come up. And I was like, oh, this is clearly a problem. But I wonder if there's any other Black girls that are looking for sunscreen. Like, will anybody buy this if I made it? Can I make it where it's going to rub in clear? Here's an idea, but is it now possible? Black people already think they don't need sunscreen. So how am I going to get other people to believe in something that I believe in and make it profitable? We get a lot of questions about Black girl sunscreen, and I never doubted it for once. I would want listeners to walk away knowing that if it feels good to you, then execute it. Follow your intuition. I've learned that I can do this. Hey, this is Shontay Lundy, and you're listening to Dreams and Drive.
Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 245 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. On today's episode, we are going to be sitting down with Shontay Lundy. So here's her story. After refusing to look like a pasty white ghost with market-available sunscreen, Shontay took matters into her own hands and created the revolutionary brand Black Girl Sunscreen, which she wants and she hopes is helping to bridge the gap of sun care protection in the Black community. So this episode is going to feel, or it feels like to me, more like a sit down with a girlfriend, guys. We are going to be reflecting on Shontay's journey to date and really get into the intricate details of just what it means to be a dream driver and all her experiences that led her, that gave her the confidence that really made who she is today and what allowed her to create Black Girl Sunscreen. And guess what, guys? We're doing a giveaway. So if you've ever heard of Black Girl Sunscreen, or if you just want to try Black Girl Sunscreen, we're giving away 5 tubes of Black Girl Sunscreen. So all you have to do to enter is go to dreamsanddrive.com/win. That's dreamsanddrive.com/win. 5 dream drivers will be receiving a tube of Black Girl Sunscreen. So make sure you enter if you want to be included in that. As always, if you enjoy this week's episode, please make sure you are sharing it on social. I love to see you guys screenshotting and sharing to Instagram. Make sure you're tagging us. We are across the board, Dreams and Drive, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you want to get our weekly newsletter, The Keys, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join to sign up. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join to sign up. All right, let's hear from Shontay.
Hey, Raina, how you doing?
I am doing good. We are currently, I don't even want to say this is the beginning, the middle, or the end of COVID-19. We don't know, right? But we are month 2 into quarantine, right? Late May.
Yeah, I think so. For me, I mean, for everybody, at the beginning of March, I was actually in South Africa.
Wow.
When we got the news that like travelers couldn't come in from other countries. So I think that was like March, like 10th or something like that. But yeah, we're 2 months in.
So you were able to come home though?
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles now. So what happened is we got the news. I was in Africa for business on the front end and then a little bit of pleasure on the back end. Black Girl Sunscreen was actually pitching to South African retailers, major retailers, trying to get the product into the store. Actually, they wanted to put the product. So I was in Johannesburg and the Cape. Broke out. It was just like, okay, all meetings were canceled. And I had to make a plan on to catch a flight immediately or just to kind of like let my trip play out.
Okay.
And when you spend money on those type of flights and things like that, but for me, I was like, well, let me just play it out. Like, I am not a nervous person. Part of the trip was me to Tanzania from South Africa, but what they did was all visas. So you couldn't.
Oh my God.
And South Africa said, well, once you leave, that's it, right? So South Africa, you're not coming back in. So I had to make the choice to stay in South Africa, and I just headed over to Durban. And Durban is like a beach community. I was there for about 5 days on returning back, and right. Well, if I don't return back, how long can I stay in South Africa? Right. And my budget would have allowed me to stay for 45 days in South Africa. So then my friends and my family were just like, well, if something happens to you, Shontay, like we can't get to you, just come back or whatever. Okay. So I waited out for my full trip, caught a flight back, and the flight process was actually really easy. The leg from South Africa up to Paris was a full flight. The flight coming from Paris to Los Angeles, I mean, there was only like 50 people on the flight. Everyone had their own row. Yeah, everyone had their own row. It was just very, very easy. And we landed, we thought we were going to get tested, but because, you saw that, that picture that was floating around the O'Hare airport, right? Where it was like all jam packed and stuff.
It looked crazy.
Yeah, it was super crazy, but that wasn't the experience. So we landed and they asked us a couple of questions. And if you said no to all those questions, you were on your way. I have global entry. So I went through global entry and I think my process was 45 minutes.
So you were back in LA and able to just quarantine at home.
I was back in LA and I came back the end of March. So I missed the whole frenzy. I missed the frenzy of people going into the grocery store, buying up everything.
All the toilet paper.
Just that craziness. And I'm actually glad that I did stay the amount of time that I did in South Africa, because that's not my personality. Being stressed, being pressured. I'm really calm and I keep composure. So I didn't really live through this chaotic, time. And I have to admit, before Rona, I didn't really go anywhere. I travel, but in terms of like being in LA, I don't do much. Mm-hmm. So I've just been in the house and this has been pretty normal for me.
But let's talk about that. You talked a little bit about this wasn't your personality to be stressed out and to be in chaotic. Yeah. Let's go back in time, right? The young mm-hmm. Shontay. What was your personality like as a kid growing up? What was inspiring you about the world back then?
I was very competitive.
Okay.
And my inspiration was just always, whatever I did, I just wanted to be the best at it. So, from a young age, I went to a magnet school, and a magnet school, they just have like different programs and it teaches you about like the real world. So you have like fake money, but the only way you could earn fake money is if you did like other things for teachers.
Okay. That's interesting.
If that makes sense, right? like clean the classroom or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you had to earn the money. So anyway, like in grade 6, I was class president in elementary school in grade 6, right? Like that's top. Like there's nothing higher than the class president in grade 6. I also wanted to be the president of the United States.
Okay, girl.
In grade 6. So it was the Bushes. It was George Bush who was running. It was Ross Perot, whatever his name was, the guy from Texas, the billionaire. Yeah. He was independent. He wasn't red or blue. But long story short, I also played the violin in elementary school, and there were only 2 violinists in the school. And this one girl, she owned her violin, and I didn't own my violin. And each summer, she would always come back, like returning from summer, she would come back really good because she was practicing. And I remember our final, like all county, and all county is like when you play with all the other schools in the district. Mm-hmm. So for like 4 years, she would get seat 1 and I would be seat 2. And my final year in 6th grade, I got seat 1 and she got seat 2. So like the inspiration and like even, transitioning into Black Girl Sunscreen, I've always had this drive to just be the best in whatever it was I was doing. So from playing the violin to being, I wouldn't say popular in school, but just getting the best out of my situation, running track and doing well in all county, being the captain of, cheerleading squad, just doing everything I can do, being in corporate America and always staying on top of metrics. Meaning like, I don't need to be number 1, but being top 5 is important, right? And having that consistency. So really what inspired me is just always wanting more
Did you ever feel the downside of what it means to be the best, right? Because I know, like, even me, I was kind of a high achieving youngster myself, right? But there was a lot of internally that you had to deal with in that road to wanting to be the best, because I don't want to say it's something that all kids wanted to do. Like, there was definitely a certain level of work ethic that may have differentiated you from your peers, right? How did you navigate that, or did you have to navigate that?
I'm going to bring it somewhere else. So the downside of that is, I wouldn't call myself a military brat, but I kind of am. So I was born on a military base. Both my parents were in the military. So were my grandparents, or my grandfather, not my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mother had me while she was in the Army. So my grandparents took care of me, and they encouraged me to do pretty much everything that I've ever done in life. So the upside of that was I have these kind of like old school morals and principles instilled with me, right? So the downside of that was my parents would think that I respected my grandparents more than I respected them, right? And my grandparents always wanted more from us than I think my parents did. So when it came to being an overachiever, a high achiever, my parents were actually like, oh, you think you're, because I'm going to college. I was the first person to get my family, my immediate family, from college. Oh, you think you're this because you're going to college, or you think you're that because you're moving to Miami to do your master's. So there was downside from I would say my family more than peers.
That's so real. And it's something that I remember I talked about this to previous guests too. Sometimes dream killers can be the people closest to you, right? And that may not be their intention, but like their perspective and their interpretation of how you exist in the world can be dream killing. How did you stay strong through that? Or how did you navigate and not allow that to take away from the core of who you were?
Well, now as I get older, right? And one of the pieces of advice for just other budding entrepreneurs is to clear out that minutia. At that time, we are hard to block people out of your mental, because what do you know about that? Like, how do you know not to listen to an adult, right? It's just something that you kind of internalize, and you kind of say like, okay, I don't really care what they say. Or it's a negative thing too. Like why is this person saying this to me? Like, are they jealous? Like what? Like, why is my mom telling me that? Oh, I think I'm smarter, or you think you're smarter. You know what I mean? It's like a really weird concept. So at the time, like, I didn't really know how to navigate that. I just continued to do what I did. But now as an adult, I'm starting to realize what was really happening there and why there may have been anger and resentment on that other person's side, right? Because it didn't really have much to do with me. It had to do what they had or not had going on with themselves. Or like I had an aunt too, who would say, I'm really proud of you, Shontay. I seen everything that I was inside of you, but she just didn't get there. So it comes from different angles.
Yeah, and I think now, like you were saying, as adults, it's good to be able to reflect on that and kind of even forgive our parents. Like, they're people too, right? And you're able to see things in a different light, but of course you don't see that when you're a 10-year-old kid and you're just trying to be the best, and they're like, to you, it's like, why you hating? You know, it's like, Ma, you're supposed to be on my side. You're supposed to be on my side.
And and honestly, Raina, I've never talked about this publicly before.
Wow.
Like, ever. And I think though, but I do say this out loud now, is that if I even had that encouragement from them, right, not just from my grandparents, because they will always be like, oh, you can do this, or we want you to do that, teaching me how to use silverware properly, when to use well as opposed to good, but let's say my mom was coming to my track meets or coming to the basketball games that I was cheering at, I think that I might be somewhere else because, and this is not to be like boasting about it, but I was pretty good at everything that I did. So what if I had that extra push from them, right? Like when I played the violin, the feedback was, oh, you're screeching. Like, oh, it's too much noise. Like, stop. I'm being honest. Like, where else can you play your violin? But I play the violin to this day. Like, I take violin lessons. And what if I was just able to play freely? And the parent was just kind of like, clapping. You know what I mean? So that's what I think about now. What if that encouragement, what if it just sounded just a little different, right? And I'm not crying wolf, I'm not crying victim, but this has shaped me into who I am today.
The journey that you've been on, because I've listened to you on other podcasts and I've read your story, and you literally were dream driving across the country, girl. You were going from New York to Miami to LA. So we're going to talk about that, but let's get this dream going, right? Going into college, what was this vision you had for yourself? Because a lot of times we as young adults, right? We think we know what we want to do. Did that actually, did the vision and the reality work out for you?
No. I think at 17, because I graduated when I was 17, my birthday is in October. So I don't know if anybody really knows what they want to do.
Some people do, and I'm like, yo, kudos
some people
to
do.
you.
You're right. I didn't, and I felt so stuck because, again, this was something new for my family. Going to college, going to a university is new. So what do they know about picking a major? What do they know about this, right? What do they know about necessarily a passion? So my guidance counselor helped me get into school and select a school. And I said, okay, I'm going to go upstate, not too far from home, still drivable, whatever. And I chose elementary education. Elementary education is just being a teacher for from grades K through 6. I said, okay, cool. So the first 2 years, you're not really into your major freshman, sophomore year anyway. And so I have younger siblings that are 11 and 13 years younger than I am. Okay. So when I was in college, they were growing up and they were bad as hell. They were bad as hell. I said, oh, I got to switch my major because if this is what my students are like, I'm not going to survive. So I literally changed my major based off of seeing how my siblings behaved. I know, isn't that? And it's
I don't want that life.
Random.
That's not the life.
Right. It's not random, but it actually, like, to this day, I tell that story because that's true life. Like, I even look at kids today. I'm like, oh, you're saying the wrong things. You're saying the wrong things. Like, I have patience, but not for little ones being disrespectful. So anyway, I switched over to business because it was so broad. And with the business degree, you can kind of go into anything. So I said, let me do that. And it worked out because once I started to getting familiarized with, I don't know, macro, microeconomics, finance, marketing, all of these different segments of a business, it became really interesting. So I said, okay, cool, I'll rock with that. And I graduated with my undergrad with business. And then I said, well, my grandparents encouraged me to pursue higher education. And then I went to study in Miami and got my MBA.
So let me ask you a question about that. Just because I know you literally drove your car from upstate New York to Miami, right? What were you thinking along that drive? Like, this was how long is that drive? Like 1,500 miles, I want to say? Like, that's a lot of miles.
I drove, and that was always the plan, I knew when I graduated undergrad that I was going to go start my master's in Miami, right? I knew I was going to drive my car. So I ended up taking off a little bit earlier because of a situation that occurred. But anyway, at the time I was driving a 1992 Saturn SL, right? And you're probably like, what the hell is that? But anyway, it's just a small little car. I packed that baby up. First of all, I had a flip phone. Okay. and I had to use MapQuest. How about that? Right? There was no...
You print out the directions, right?
Of course. But my uncle was like, just jump on the 95, head south, right? Because 95 takes you all the way down to Florida.
Miami.
All the way to Miami. And you get off on 125th Street, take a left, and you'll see my grandmother's condo. And that's what I did.
Wow.
So I made it to Georgia in one day. Right. I was like, okay, I'm going to have this determination to make it to Georgia. Because if you make it to Georgia, you're more than halfway there. Right. Made it to Georgia. And then the next day I was like, okay, I'm going to make it down to Miami. And on that car ride, like, if I really muster through my memories, I was just listening to a lot of Aaliyah, and hoping that I didn't get lost. Now I reflect the way I'm reflecting on that move is that I made a really big girl decision at a really young age.
How old were you? 20, 21?
Right? At 21. And at 21, like, yeah, you're considered an adult, but there's still a lot of things that are underdeveloped. Like, I know so much more now than I ever did at 21. I just know that when I see other females or even males that are doing the damn thing, I'm like, good for you. Good for you on implementing whatever you said you were going to do. I was on a podcast and there was a guy who was talking to me. I mean, I know he was 22. I said, dude, I'm about 15 years your senior. And he just started laughing. And at the end of the podcast, I was like, yeah, how old are you? He's like 22. I was like, yeah, I knew it. Right. But good for you. Right. Because you are here professional, you're on time, and you are doing what you're saying you're going to do. So I didn't have much thought driving across the country or from New York to Florida then. It was just more of like, this is the next chapter in my life. I'm probably never, ever going back home. I'm never going back to New York once this move is complete. Like I'm big now. Like I'm an adult. Like college was cool, but like when you are moving to a new state with a new purpose, it's a whole nother level. Was I scared? A little bit. I needed to find a job. I needed to find an apartment. My grandmother had a condo, but that was just temporary. That was, that was there. You know, like, am I going to have friends? Like, what does my new life look like? That was actually really a huge part of who I am today, that move.
Wow. Do you think business school was worth it for you?
You know, I didn't retain a lot from it. And I did my master's in 2004. I mean, we're in 2020. So it was quite some time. And I know that the curriculum has changed tremendously. You know, then we were doing a lot of case studies. We were doing a lot of problem solving, you know, mock businesses. And that did help me prepare for my journey today. And it also introduced me to people that are currently in my life and in my business. So that period of my life is also important to what's happening today, like literally.
And I know after that you decided to enter the corporate world, right? At any point during your years in corporate, did you ever consider entrepreneurship, or were you kind of just heads down, making sure you were being the best employee that Shontay could be?
I think the struggle is that when you graduate college, it's like you might be pressured to have to get a job to pay bills depending on your situation. And what you just, as I moved from New York to Miami, I didn't have much of financial support. I just didn't. So I knew I needed to get a job to pay for my rent. Okay. So I was, after I graduated with my master's, I did a part-time job, but I was looking for something full-time. And it's crazy because you graduate and these corporations are trying to offer you $12, $13. And you're like, yo, I have 2 degrees. You're trying to really give me $13 and thinking that's okay and that's livable, because it's not. So anyway, signed up for a major corporation, number 1 company within that industry. And I mean, they were paying pennies, but they had a really good program and structure, and it gave you the ability to learn their business and to move up. And if you brought into that mindset and that culture, then you could be set up for success. And because I told you that I like to be number 1, I like to be really good at whatever I'm doing, I bought into that and climbed up that corporate ladder. I wouldn't say relatively quickly. I say I paced myself, but I learned a lot. And some of those things that I've learned, I've brought into Black Girl Sunscreen. We're just really having that structure. I wouldn't say the work ethic, because I always had the work ethic. And really, in order to succeed and to thrive in those environments, you have to have the work ethic. But communication, right? How to communicate to different types of employees, whether that be, you know, an employee that's under you, or a peer, a coworker, or even upper management, right? That's different levels of communication. What does an IT department do? Is it necessary? How necessary is it for marketing to be involved? You know, what is operation? So this organization really, really helped me gain structure in business. So I would only say good things about this company and what they breed. right? And this is where you do the job before you actually get the pay and the title, right? That's the mentality that they're enforcing, right? Because nowadays it's, I want you to pay me this because I'm capable of doing that. But there's really no evidence.
Yep.
Seriously. I've come up, right? 12 years in that one company and then another 2 years, same industry, different company, and it's pretty much the same mentality. You have to perform because you're only as good as your last month's numbers. So consistency is everything. You can get termed for underperforming, period. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's not what you want. So the corporate side has definitely given me I wouldn't say a leg up, but just giving me the knowledge that I need today. It was extremely necessary for me to be in corporate.
You know what? I love that you mentioned that because I think sometimes a lot of people feel, well, some people naturally just skip the corporate. Like, let's think of like the Facebooks of the world, right? Like he had this big idea, so he never worked for anyone else except for him. But what do you think others who are debating whether they should be doing something full-time or, pursuing entrepreneurship full-time or maybe getting a job, working in corporate for a bit, understanding how the world works, and then doing their hustle on the side? Like, which one would you recommend to entrepreneurs who are starting out?
I think it's solely based on who that person is. Like I said, like I'm learning about how necessary it is to have HR, right? And how certain information is just straight up confidential. Like you should not be talking to an employee about another employee, right? Like that's just, it should be common sense, but not everybody knows it. And maybe being exposed to that type of environment and situations could be helpful, right? It's the same question as, hey, do you think it's necessary to have your master's or a degree in business before you start a business? No, I don't think it is, but I don't think it could hurt either. I don't think it could hurt to be exposed to these different processes that are necessary to get you going, or different levels of professionalism and how to communicate to different people. I don't think that is hurtful at all. So the more you know, the better. So I have a combination of corporate plus education and now entrepreneurship.
Was there a point, though, where you got tired of corporate? Because I feel like there's always a point along people's journey where they're like, this is getting too much.
Every day.
While you were working, every day when you were working there, you were tired of it. And you stayed there for 12 years. Yeah. You're better than me. You are better than me.
Yeah, because it'd be like dumb stuff. It'd be like dumb stuff. Like somebody will call you with something just like, you're like, really, why are you calling me with this? Or like, I don't know if you've ever worked with somebody that makes your heart palpitate because they might not have the right energy, but because you work under this same corporation, like you don't really have a choice and you have to figure out how to navigate through those relationships. So those are the moments where you're just kind of like, yeah, this isn't for me, or I'm over it. Or you're put in precarious situations where you don't necessarily have the resources to do your job. And that was the industry that I was in, where, customer service is everything. And that's another thing that I really learned how to master in corporate America is the customer service aspect of it. Like, yeah, a customer can always be right, but there's always a way to negotiate and to compromise being professional, right? So being in those types of situations, I separates Black Girl Sunscreen, I know, from other businesses. And that's a fact.
So let's talk about Black Girl Sunscreen. How? Why Black Girl Sunscreen? It's something that, first of all, not to be cliche or anything, but a lot of people, Black people, don't think they even need sunscreen, right? That's a big thing within our culture. A lot of people are like, sunscreen, just put on some olive oil. That's my mother says that. Put on some cocoa butter. You don't need the sunscreen, right? So it's definitely an industry where you don't see a lot of Black females dominating. What inspired you to even get into the sunscreen business?
Listen, I've been keeping 100 on this podcast the whole time during our conversation. Okay. I have to tell you that it wasn't like, I was cooking it up or anything like that. I am a woman of the sun. I was in Miami for quite some time, loving going to the beach. I drove over to California when I first moved here, right? So that was another long distance drive. In California, it's just a different mindset. It's a different air. It's a lot of creatives over here. And it just feels very natural to be doing, be pursuing a dream, something that is bigger than you, whatever that is. But that's how I felt. Like you can come to LA and see people just, chilling at 3:00. And maybe they're not really chilling. Maybe they are on their kind of laptop working, but this is just kind of like the visual, right? People jogging, living their best life. And I was like, oh, this feels really, really good. This feels really, really good. But what do I do about it? And it wasn't like I just had this idea like right off the top. It was just came naturally to me. Hiking a lot. So being in the sun a lot, doing pool parties, and then being around a diverse community for a long time and always being offered sunscreen. Hey girl, put this sunscreen on. I'm like, nah, chill. That's not for me.
From non-black,
right?
from non-people of color, or
yeah, biracial, lighter skin, and it'd be like, hey, we're gonna be in the sun all day because we're going to this pool party. You should put this on. And I'm like, no, because if I want to put whatever, a lipstick, a little bit of foundation on, it's gonna look crazy. Like you can put it on in your hand right away and tell that is you're gonna look crazy. And then the next thing it would be like, okay, well, put this on my skin, rub it in, and I'll be like, no, because I don't have a place to wash my hands, right? Because so it left a sticky residue on your hands. So finally, I was like, okay, well, let me just jump online to see if I could find something that will work for my skin complexion. As you can see, I'm a darker skinned woman, and I just wanted it to be a seamless process. And so when I started putting the keywords, and I'm sure you've heard this story before, but sunscreen for brown skin, sunscreen for dark skin, sunscreen for brown girls, black girls, nothing would come up. And I was like, oh, this is clearly a problem. But I wonder if there's any other black girls that are looking for sunscreen. Like, will anybody buy this if I made it? Can I make it where it's going to rub in clear? So those are all the questions that I had for myself. Like, is this possible? Here's an idea, but is it now possible? Black people already think they don't need sunscreen. So how am I going to get other people to believe in something that I believe in and make it profitable?
So you didn't even think about just making it for yourself. You thought about this could be a product that other people can use as well.
Right away, because I saw that I couldn't find anything online. And I'm like, well, this is clearly a problem. Like, am I the only one that's looking for sunscreen for women of color? Like, I can't be. Like, this would be crazy. So that's what I thought. And then I already knew, once I had the idea, once I saw that, I was like, we're calling it Black Girl Sunscreen. That's it. We're not even calling it anything else because I'm a black girl and it's sunscreen.
Simple, to the point.
But that has even evolved, right? That has even evolved to something that I couldn't imagine.
What year was this?
2016.
Okay.
So from sunscreen, right, literally being one SKU, we have 2 SKUs now. We have BGS Kids, but evolving to something that is a source of empowerment, a source of inspiration, a source of celebration of Blackness. So I am really proud of that because I saw this evolve from just this sunscreen product to being so much more than that and continuing. So that's how I got it started back in 2016. And so much has happened in between there.
Let's talk about it. A lot of people often, they get these ideas, right? They think of these concepts. They figure out there's demand for it. But then where they get messed up is the execution of actually bringing it to reality, right? What were the big steps that you had to undergo in order to bring this idea to life?
Well, first I knew that I had some capital, so that wasn't too much of a concern, and I budgeted properly for that. I would say the biggest obstacle was the mindset of, okay, Black people don't normally wear sunscreen. Are they going to purchase it? Okay, well, we'll figure that marketing aspect out. But first, how do I make it?
Right, because it's not...
Where do you go? So, in school, they don't necessarily teach you this. This is something that you kind of have to be savvy. Like, it's jumping online and saying like, okay, do I put in a sunscreen manufacturer, cosmetic manufacturer? Where does the manufacturer need to be? Do I want to start it from scratch? Do I want a private label, white label? There's so many different options. Do I want everything done in one house? Do I want to source from over here, over there? So it's really formulating a strategy before you before you even make a move. So the first obstacle was finding that manufacturer on who was going to be along the ride with a startup.
Mm-hmm.
And when you hear the name Shontay, you automatically know it's a Black girl, right? So I'm calling these manufacturers and they're talking to me as if I'm very inexperienced and young and I don't know anything about their industry. So they're telling me what they're going to do for my formula. And I'm like, no, that's not the idea that I have.
Mm-hmm.
We want a formula to be absolutely clear. And we want, let's say, for example, no harmful ingredients such as oxybenzone. And the feedback is, well, no, oxybenzone has to be in the formula because that's how it's been for the last 20 years. So, combating 6 of those guys can be really defeating and deflating because you're kind of like, I just keep hitting walls. Who's going to be able to do this for me? And I think it was that 6th manufacturer that was like, yeah, come into my office. Let's talk about it. We can get you something going. So that was a really huge obstacle for me. And then I think the next thing is just like trademarks and things like that, like understanding how important having assets for your company is.
That intellectual property too, right? And did you at that point, because I think sometimes people don't think about the future. They might think very short term, like, all right, let me just try to get this out for the next, 3 months, even a year. But you were thinking like long term, this is going to be a brand that's going to be here to stay, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I had a 5-year plan, but I did a 3-year plan. I had a plan to sell the inventory that I purchased, and the MOQs for sunscreen are higher.
MOQ, just for our audience, what does that mean?
It's like how much, like your lowest, your minimum order. So some industries can do 1,000. Some will do 2,000. Some might even do 500. Right, like your minimum order quantity could be 500 units. That's not many units at all. Our sunscreen is in the thousands.
In the thousands?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. It's in the thousands. Right. So then you have packaging, and then you have a formula. And if you want to do secondary packaging is just the packaging that is outside of the original packaging. So you could do, I don't know, like a bottle or a tube in a box. I didn't do it that way because I didn't budget for secondary packaging. I didn't feel like it was necessary.
What was your marketing plan? How are you going to get customers? How are you going to get people to know that there's a sunscreen out there for Black girls that they need to buy, and even educate a huge market that may not even realize that they need to be wearing sunscreen?
And at the time, we're talking about 2016, that answer was easy for me. Instagram. You saw everybody launching everything on Instagram. Online boutiques was the big thing. How you got an Instagram boutique selling the clothes out to them?
Selling Fashion Nova knockoffs, right? Or not even, because Fashion Nova kind of is knockoffs of everything else. It's everyone. It's like it wasn't. So you just kind of said social media is going to be where I.
I knew it. I knew it from the very beginning. I said we're launching on social media. We did a full-on photo shoot. I cried a day at the end of the day because it was 4 scenes with like 7 girls. We had a photographer, a videographer. We had a producer. I mean, it was a whole big thing. And it was such a long day. We started at 5 a.m. and we got done at 9. And that was our first campaign. And we launched those pictures now introducing, a sunscreen for women of color. So I knew once I had the idea, like I'm going to launch it on social because that was a free marketing platform. Right. And I just saw so many people doing it. And I was just like, well, if they can do it, then why can't I do it? And I can do it. And that's how we continue to have a voice today, is optimizing and maximizing all social media platforms because they have different audiences. And really, like, if you're not on social today, you're missing out.
And you were strictly e-commerce at this point.
In 2016 and 17, absolutely. E-commerce. And then we started to develop, at the end of 2017, wholesale partnerships with local brick and mortars, other .com websites that cater to what else were we doing? We were doing trade shows. We were doing other types of conversations. So that's how we expanded our marketing, right? So if we partner up with another .com and they're talking about, hey, we have these products for brown and black girls, but here's Black Girl Sunscreen, like that's a form of marketing, right?
Yeah.
The trade shows were really important because we were getting familiarized with the community. We were educating people that came to our booth. We were letting them test the product, because that's another thing. Like, people want to, test it out before they make that purchase. And I think sometimes creating a footprint, in your local market is cool, because make a name for yourself there. It doesn't always have to be so grand. Like, conquer what you have right here at your fingertips, right? So if you can do those local shows, then do that. Why do you have to spend so much money to travel across the United States to do a trade show? Like, do everything that you can within your power, within your limits. So it was e-com. It was, and then we partnered up too with estheticians. And those partnerships have been tremendous for Black Girl Sunscreen. Like, to this
day. Did you reach out to them, or was it kind of like a natural, people heard of you and they started recommending you to their clients?
I really wish that we had that support and that team, that salesperson to reach out to wholesale accounts and to other .coms and estheticians, but we weren't there at that time, right? Because that takes manpower. So it was strictly what they saw on the gram, if they heard about us, word of mouth, or was a referral. And that's even how we do it today, where we have estheticians or, platforms for women of color contacting Black Girl Sunscreen. So we are still not reaching out to wholesale accounts to carry our products. So we've been really just kind of fortunate about just the traction that we've been getting, the buzz that we have, and attracting these type of partnerships.
What do you think, during this time of growth for you, Shontay, right? What was the thing that you were learning about yourself and what it takes to be a founder, a CEO of a thriving company?
I'm learning that it's okay to still be nervous and scared about things. I'm learning that growing can be uncomfortable, very uncomfortable.
How so?
New relationships. If you let's talk about the retail relationship first of all, right? So when you have a relationship with a big box retailer, they have bigger asks.
Target, which you are in over 200 Target stores, right?
Yeah, but we are, and we're really proud of that because we are the first Black indie sunscreen brand to be in sun care. Meaning, if you walk down the aisle, right, claps to that, snaps as well. But if you walk down that aisle, you will see Black Girl Sunscreen standing next to the larger, general sunscreen brands that have dominated that industry for decades upon decades. So this is a huge accomplishment for us. And it's all because of you, though. All because of everyone that's listening, all because of everyone that has supported the brand and helped us elevate and get to that point. So I always say thank you for anyone that has ever purchased Black Girl Sunscreen, that has ever told anyone else, because without that buzz, without that talk, we wouldn't be there. But like, even with those type of relationships, right, growing is uncomfortable because it forces you to level up. So it forces you to implement processes that you might have to Google about what the acronym stands for. Right. But you gotta go with it. Right. So you either say to them like, oh, I'm not familiarized with that term, or while they're talking, you just Google it up real fast. Right. So it just depends. But either way, you still have to figure out like how to do that. And I am very hands-on. So like, I like to, before I outsource something, I try to see if I can do it myself. Because when we do have a full-on team, I can teach them what I know. So I know just a little bit to be a little dangerous, right? If that makes sense. So, in that respect, it's uncomfortable because you're doing things that you haven't done before, whether it is figuring out, what EDI partner to use, or finding a warehouse that's capable of shipping a high volume, or even determining what region you want your warehouse to be in for different reasons. And thinking about like, hey, how am I going to get this capital now to fulfill, this type of PO? Like, that's an uncomfortable
Target
feeling.
You got to be able to fulfill to all their stores, right? It's a whole different monster.
Yeah, whatever stores you're in, they just send you a PO for a certain amount of units, and then you fulfill it. So I would say that is uncomfortable. And then, I think people have this mindset of when they transition out of corporate America, like some of the reasons are, oh, I wanted to be my own boss. But really in reality, like, you're never really your own boss, right? Even if you offer a service or a product, like, you're still, I don't want to call it answering, but you're still communicating with someone about something. So again, like, it can be uncomfortable having those types of conversations. Like, oh, well, we're doing this on the back end to then do this, to then do that. Like, that's answering to someone, and that could be uncomfortable. So I say all of that to say that growing isn't always as easy as you think. But when you get over it, you're like, oh, I feel better. I feel good about this.
Was there anything else? I know I had cut you off when you were talking about the things that you learned about yourself. So you learned that growth can be uncomfortable. Was there anything else that you were learning about, or maybe even surprised about, proud about who Shontay was becoming? I think a lot of us along this dream driving journey, we don't give ourselves enough credit for our own personal growth, because that definitely is a fuel to the bigger business growth as well.
So for me right now, planning has always been an issue, and this has forced me to become a better planner. So I see myself, like, today, literally, we have a big event in about a week or so, and I'm like over preparing for this event. Randomly. My team asked me yesterday, "Hey, are you nervous about this particular day?" I'm like, "No, we got this, because I got this amount of that amount of this, so we're full on ready." But I'll tell you, last year, there was a couple of times where I just didn't plan, and it came down to the wire, and everyone is pulling out their hair. Everyone is, I would say beyond stressed. Like, you can't even describe it. Where I was getting sick, I was having vertigo attacks.
Wow.
At this moment, because it was a lot to handle. So that's what I mean by just growing can be uncomfortable. I've learned that I can do this. Sometimes I doubt myself, because we're only continuing to grow, and we still have so much more to do. But I look in the mirror and I see this little girl wearing glasses, thick glasses, and I have to remind myself, like, Shontay, you can do this. You got this. And because I am doing it, I know, and I've learned that I can do it, to stop doubting myself.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because, I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs on the show, and I used to think before I started interviewing entrepreneurs that the hardest part of business was, the tactical stuff, like, accounting and the numbers and all that stuff. But I tell you, time and time again, people say the biggest thing is yourself and that doubt and fear. Mm-hmm. What would you say to other entrepreneurs who are feeling like giving up, who are trying to navigate this doubt and fear? It's hard. It's really hard.
Oh, I gave up yesterday. I think it was yesterday.
But you're still here, right? You gave up, but not for long.
No, because, my mantra is never get too high and never get too low. It's to keep composure, right? And never getting too high means, like, okay, you can have some really stellar days. Like, this is a cool conversation. It's a great conversation. But, like, okay, so anything can happen today, right? Like, never let that just bring you so high that, like, you forget everything, right? You can get a feature in your favorite magazine, or you can get that call, but, like, this is part of business. And I always believe if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, that this will all come. My advice is like, never get too high, never get too low. You will have those days where, like, I literally, like when I was telling you about last year, missing a couple deadlines, like I was in my office floor, like crying, like literally like crying, where everything on my calendar has now been canceled because I cannot talk. At the end of the day, it's just business. And there is tomorrow. There's tomorrow to regroup, to re-strategize, to come on back. Come on back.
Taking care of yourself too, right? Because if you're not here, then, I mean, of course the business can live beyond you, but you want to be here while it's still your time to be here, right? To see it through.
Yeah, there's different perspectives. The business living through you, living past you. We won't go into it, but I definitely have different perspectives on that. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily my own, but just having brand founders around me and like what their thought on if your business should be able to live past you.
That could be a whole. It's
a whole nother conversation.
I just had Tristan Walker of Bevel, and he was talking about like one of the reasons why he sold the company to Procter and Gamble was because he wanted it to live on, or he just knew like people's ideas on legacy. That's definitely something. I think you have to figure out what that means for you, what that means for your business, what it means for your team even. One of the things I do want to ask you about, because a lot of people, depending upon the type of business that they have, they often don't know how big a team that they need to build, right? How big is the Black Girl Sunscreen team now? Or how do you get everything done? Because having a retail business is not for the faint of heart, right?
Listen, it's not for the weak. So I started off with myself, and at that point, most important people was my web developer, because that's something that I can't do. I don't know the back of anything. I don't know coding. I don't know, integration in terms of things like that. Like integration with another brand, sure, but when it comes to I'm completely illiterate. So when I first started Girl Sunscreen, it was just me and my developer, who is still with me today. So in fact, 2020, we do have team. I have a senior marketing coordinator there. Then we have need that. So a legal department. And then anything that we've outsourced. So for example, our warehouse, capabilities, that's outsourced. We have a couple that like represent us to, that's outsourced. So they're not on Black Girl Sunscreen's payroll. They kind of are.
Okay, yeah. One of the things that you mentioned when you were younger, Shontay, is that you always liked to be number one, right? Or you had this desire to be number one. Do you feel like you have that same desire now with Black Girl Sunscreen?
Absolutely.
And how are you working towards that? Like, what would you say, like, for any dream driver listening in, like, if you want to be number one, if you want to be at the top of what you're doing, these are the things you really got to be doing day in and day out.
Figuring out how to bring attention to whatever you're doing. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't have that attention, then you don't exist. It's the same as, me jumping on Google, putting in keywords for sunscreen and nothing popping up, no result popping up. So if you don't have that Google visibility, or if you're not SEOing, or at least having a blogger write about you, then are you there? You know what I mean? Like, does this even exist? No, it doesn't. So I would say, in order to be at the top, to be known, to be recognized, is creating that attention for yourself, right? And that's how people become celebrities, is being popular. And it's not even about a contest of being liked or whatever. It's about being known and being consistent in whatever it is that you're offering. So for example, Black Girl Sunscreen, we've created a product that does what it says it's supposed to do. Protect your skin from the sun, leaving no white residue. So if you buy, or if you have Black Girl Sunscreen, you know that it does that. It comes out white, but it rubs in completely sheer, leaving a radiance glow onto your skin. So not are we only, this brand that serves as empowerment, inspiration, and we're unapologetic about who we are, but we also produce products that work. So we're consistent with both our messaging and our products. And then we make a lot of noise on everything that we do. So we're not quiet about, starting a conversation to educate women of color about sun care protection. Like, we're not quiet about that. Like, that's our mission and vision. I talk about it on every chance that I get. The team talks about it, right? So we're just consistent in our messaging across the board, and we do things to put ourselves in spotlight. So whatever opportunity, when it comes to collaboration or sponsoring an event that aligns with our brand, we take advantage of those opportunities. Nothing is ever too big or too small for us to participate in. If a blogger is like, hey, I'm just starting out, can I write a piece on Black Girl Sunscreen? Absolutely. You know why? Because that blogger is going to do something with that article.
Yeah.
And again, that could bring you some type of visibility, even if it is to a small audience. So I would say, like, don't sleep on those small things. Like, you have to get started somehow. So being that number one is having attention.
And lastly,
then producing afterwards.
You said, actually making sure you could, you're just not, you actually about it. You're talking about it and you're actually about it in real life, right? Like, the product actually works. You can't be number one and your product doesn't work. I mean, you could be, but then that's always short term, right?
It is. And then it's mixed, right? Because it's one thing to have, it's like going to a movie, they hype it up, right? And you go and watch it, and you're like, it wasn't everything that it was cracked up to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And one of the things too is, you said this earlier, and I think it's really important. It's the idea of, this is about so much more, right? You mentioned this earlier in the conversation, this idea of empowerment. What do you hope when people look at your story, when they listen to this podcast, like, what's the one thing you hope people walk away from this conversation remembering? Like, one thing you think you hope people will remember, what is it?
We get a lot of questions about Black Girl Sunscreen, and I never doubted it for once. I would want listeners to walk away knowing that if it feels good to you, then execute it. Follow your intuition.
Yep. Do you have a backup plan if this doesn't work?
No, because that's never been in my vocab. There is no, if this doesn't work. We're so knee deep into it, right? With partnerships and forecasting, that the plan is to go all the way. Is to go all the way, Raina. Right? Like, I've left a corporate job, right, that paid very well, to a very risky business. It's a risky concept. Everything about Black Girl Sunscreen is risky. Mm-hmm. I wake up every day loving what I do, not even thinking about, I got to go to work. It's like, no, I got Black Girl Sunscreen. Like, I'm about to do some I'm always doing something for Black Girl Sunscreen, and it comes subconsciously. Like, even now, if I'm scrolling on social and I see a post or a phrase, or I'm thinking about how relevant it is to the brand. It's now ingrained into who I am. And it's also really cool to see how the team thinks about things, how they think about Black Girl Sunscreen. So it's been really, really nice in that respect. And the reason why I don't have a Black Girl a contingency plan is because I'm in love with what I'm doing now.
Well, thank you so much, Shontay. This has been so inspiring to me, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm so inspired and motivated by all the work that you've done, and just hearing your story, right? Like, when you first made that trip when you were driving down to Miami from New York, like, the world was just opening up for you. And look at that, over 16 years later, right? Just how much you were able to accomplish from just getting in the car and going and making that decision Like, it's all about making the decision and committing to it.
And that's where it all started.
So tell our listeners where they can hear about, where they can buy Black Girl Sunscreen, where they can follow you online, all the social media stuff. Let us know.
Yeah, so Black Girl Sunscreen is Black across all social media platforms. So that's the word girl and then sunscreen. blackgirlsunscreen.com. We definitely encourage you to support other services. You might even have your esthetician that carries Black Girl Sunscreen, so you can salons. So if you're looking for us, you can definitely find us.
Okay.
If you want to reach out to Shontay personally, you can send an email to contact@Black Girl Sunscreen. As what I found as a challenge when I first started is I didn't really have anybody to reach out to. I am all ears and available for anybody that wants to connect and just kind of talk or have new ears, different ears on an idea or just needs to vent, because I can't say that I had that luxury or network when I was first starting.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, Shontay. I want to make sure that we get to our keys to success, right? If you want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So tell me, Shontay, what are 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road?
The work ethic is number 1. So knowing that, initially you're gonna have to put in those hours, whether that's a 9 to 9 or 8 to 8, whatever it looks like for you. That work is important. You got to put in the work and get your hands dirty. So work ethic is number 1 in the toolkit. Number 2 is the discipline, because knowing when and how, not necessarily how, but when something is right. So for example, are you sacrificing going to a party this weekend, knowing that you have a deadline for something? That's discipline. Sticking to a schedule, discipline. Not giving up and really trying to control your mindset, discipline. So work ethic, discipline. And in my toolkit, I have intuition, but I don't necessarily think that everybody needs to have the intuition. I would say in the toolkit, being humble is the third tool.
I was going to ask you, why?
What I'm learning is that regardless of whatever is happening with Black Girl Sunscreen, I never really let it get to me. I'm thankful for every opportunity, but I don't think I'm like the shit now because, we got this feature, or, we landed this account, or, we're doing this, right? And I think that some people lose sight of that. So if you're working hard, then these accolades should feel natural and normal to you. So being humble is a really admirable trait, and the folks around you notice that.
Yep. Work ethic, discipline, and being humble. Shontay's keys to success. Thank you so much, Shontay. This has been...
Wait. Are we doing quick thoughts? Quick thoughts?
Oh, you know what? I had that in... Do you want to do it? Because I haven't done it in a long time. I kind of was getting bored of doing it, and I felt like people kind of thought that it was... To me, I'm like, this is so corny. I don't know if I should continue with this segment. But don't worry, we can do it, all right? All right, Shontay. So this,
but give me 4 different words though.
No, this is gonna be we're gonna do park, reverse, neutral, drive. That's the segment for
Okay.
All right. So we're gonna do our lightning round. Request of Shontay, special lightning round. We're bringing back the Dreams and Drive lightning round, right? I'm gonna give you a word, Shontay, and I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind. And remember, we're sticking with our whole Dreams and Drive metaphor, okay? So get in your yes. dream driving car. Pretend you're about to drive down from New York to Miami now, right? All right.
Yes.
So tell me the first thing that comes to mind. The first word is park.
The car.
Okay. Reverse.
That's a fancy word for back up.
Yep. Okay. Neutral.
Are you driving stick?
Can you drive stick? I can't.
Yes, I learned on a stick.
You can? Okay. That is a art form that's long lost in this millennial generation. All right, and and last but not least, drive
faster.
Okay, I like that. All right, so that's a wrap for episode 245 with Shontay. I hope you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. If you enjoyed this episode, please, guys, make sure you're sharing it. Share it with your Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever. Tag us. We are Dreams and Drive across the board, and use that hashtag Dreams and Drive when sharing as well. And don't forget to enter this week's giveaway. We are giving away 5 tubes of Black Girl Sunscreen to 5 dream drivers. So if you want to enter to win, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. And if you want to get our weekly newsletter, The Keys, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join to sign up. Guys, wherever you're listening, please make sure that you are subscribed to the Dreams and Drive channel. Just hit that subscribe button on any audio player that you're listening to us. And if you're listening to us specifically on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving us ratings and reviews. Those ratings do mean a lot, and those reviews do mean a lot as well. They help new people who are searching or learning about the show really answer the question, why should I listen, right? So make sure you leave us a review, and I'll read it on the next episode of the podcast. As a reminder, Dreams and Drive merch is still available. So if you want to get a Dreams and Drive t-shirt just in time to wear this summer long to everybody that you're a dream driver putting your dreams in drive, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/shop. That's dreamsanddrive.com/shop. And I get a lot of people asking me, hey, Raina, how can we support the show? There are several options available, including being part of our Patreon community for $5 a month. So just go to dreamsanddrive.com/donate. That's dreamsanddrive.com/donate to see all available options. As always, guys, I really do appreciate hearing from you. I appreciate interviewing our guests. I've been getting a lot of interesting pitches. We have a lot of cool guests coming up on the show. So remember, if you ever want to pitch me, if you feel like you have a story that would be great for our dream drivers to hear, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/pitch. That's dreamsanddrive.com/pitch. Keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 246. Bye, guys.